Our speaker this evening has over 20 years experience at working at Oracle. He is also the co-creator of Oracle Application Express and a contributing author to several Oracle books. Please welcome the Senior Director of Software Development, Joel Kallman.
Thanks for having us here. I tend to be the most high energy person in the room, and I don't think I can match that, so thank you. What I can claim credit for is the word awesome and the lightning bolt, and I'm convinced that you will be blown away tonight. So there are some people here who aren't familiar with Oracle or haven't used it in a long time, and we're here to change your mind. So I want to do a few introductions if I can. So I have my colleagues here. Marc, who's the tall gentleman in the light blue shirt here. Marc is originally from Hamburg, Germany, and is a proud citizen and resident of Brooklyn, New York. And Marc is a development manager, longtime member of the Oracle Apex development team. And Marc does events here with the New York Oracle User Group, and Marc will present that a little bit later. Yeah. Also, we have with us Gerald Venzl, and he's a database product manager. He's originally from Austria, lives in San Francisco today, and been at Oracle since 2015. That's like you're a baby. Wow. And my name's Joel, and I want you to take a good look, because I imagine in New York City, you think that this is a unicorn, like people like this don't exist. Actually, people do live in the state of Ohio. So I'm a proud resident and almost lived my entire life in the state of Ohio. I've been at Oracle since 1996, and as I was introduced, my vice president, Michael Hitchwa, and I created Application Express beginning in 1999, and we've been leading the development and product management of it since that time. The other thing I'll ask, and I'm not going to rub salt in any wounds, is anybody a New York Giants fan at all? Anyone? A couple people? All right.
New Jersey Giants.
New Jersey Giants. I will buy every one of you a shot of Jack Daniels tonight, because I could not be more grateful that the Cleveland Browns picked up OBJ. So thank you. It's got to be painful, but I will buy you a shot of whiskey tonight. That might work, okay? So by a show of hands, how many people, when you hear Oracle, or you think of Oracle, you think of the man, right? So somebody's using Oracle, that's, they've kind of sold their soul. They've sold out. That's for the corporate enterprise, and Oracle's not cool. Anyone? Here's one, right? There's got to be more, right? And I'm not stupid. I was a customer of Oracle's before I joined Oracle, back when I had a full head of hair. And I didn't have a very good opinion of Oracle at the time myself. I thought they were expensive. I thought they were difficult to use. I thought Oracle was arrogant.
You didn't work on DB2.
Yeah, I didn't work on DB2. I'm not sure I get the joke, but that's a good one. Yes?
Based on the CORD, the law, 13 rules defined by the CORD, Oracle is the most. Oracle is the only product satisfying the most of the rules.
Oracle is the most satisfying.
Oracle is the product satisfying most of those. I guess 11.5 or 10.5.
Sure, that's right. In terms of you're saying the relational database rules. You're
Yes.
saying. Yeah, that's right.
So you have to manage the functionality and cost.
Yeah, that's right. That's right. So what I heard from Margareta tonight, right? And she hasn't used Oracle since Oracle 11, is it only, Oracle's geared towards large enterprises of more than 100,000 end users, and Oracle's really expensive, right? I mean, fair perception, I don't argue it at all. And I'm here to refute every one of those things tonight, and this has been my mission since I joined Oracle as some simpleton from Ohio. Is I wanted to change the perception and the culture from within the company, and we're going to talk about a couple of those things tonight. Okay? So one of the first things we're going to talk about, actually this is for Gerald here. Gerald, would you like to talk about Oracle XE?
Yeah, sure.
Is it on? Switch.
Switch.
Right.
There we go. Test. No? Yeah, there we go. So well, we try to break this up a little bit and not just PowerPoint you to death. So hopefully you all appreciate that, especially after a long day. But yeah, so one thing that we have done years and years ago is we introduced Express Edition with 10G back in the days of 2004, which was a free Oracle edition to use for whatever purpose, whether that's test or development, as well as your own production use cases. We have actually just released the latest version of Oracle on Express Edition as well, or Express Edition for that. So with Oracle XE 18C came out last year in October timeframe, and for Windows earlier this year, which is again a fully free to use Oracle database. One thing that we did change compared to 10G and 11G XE, for those of you who have dealt with those, these databases were geared towards allowing you to run SQL and PL SQL, have a relational database on some of it quite small hardware. So when we released 10G XE 2004, that was the same year when the first dual core processors came out from Intel and AMD. Literally just in that year we had dual core processor coming out for our home computing. So back then the goal was to actually give you an Oracle database version that you could run on your computer, which was one core and had like 1 gig of RAM or maybe 2 gig of RAM, something like that. Well, 2018, a lot of things have changed, right? We all have either quad cores or more, we have 16 gigs or more. So we decided to actually say, hey, how about you get a full-featured, powerful Oracle database free to use? And that's exactly what 18C XE has become. So this is, do you have another slide on this? Or, I don't know, Joel built the slides. But this is essentially what, you have another slide or not? Or okay. So this is what we have done. Give you a full-featured Oracle Enterprise Edition as XE. It's resource constraining itself, so you cannot use it all to up the limits. It resource constrains itself to 2 CPUs, to 2 gig of RAM, and to 12 gig of storage, but it gets you going. And that means you can start using all the features that an Oracle database has, familiarize yourself, etc. If you happen to have Oracle in your estate, you can actually try these out and so forth.
I have a question for you, Joe.
Sure.
So I remember when the first XE came out, which was a long time ago.
Yeah.
And it was bare bones. There's all these features in the Oracle database, and none of these were in XE. Is XE 18C the same?
No. Just said, so we have put all the enterprise features, or almost all the enterprise features, into Express Edition 18C.
Can you actually run real applications in XE?
Yes, you can. And we have actually people doing that today already, and even before with the old version. So we don't restrict you with anything that you can do with XE. It's just this resource restriction that the software does itself. Whether you just develop something against that you then deploy in production, whether you use it as a test environment, whether you run your own production environment, whether it's a little website that you serve with a database underneath or anything else. Do you have any examples for use cases for XE, for example?
I have examples, but you're getting ahead of me here.
All right, fair enough.
So let's say I'm a developer. Let's say
Right.
I don't use Oracle. I write applications. What can I do with XE?
Anything that the Oracle database gives you. So that depends immediately on what you want to do, right? So whether you're a developer, obviously you can start using it, you can write your application against it, whether that's relational, whether that's you want to use our JSON support that we have added, or graph support, and so forth. Also, if you're a data scientist, for example, we have actually a lot of the machine learning algorithm that you would find today in Python or in R are also actually in the Oracle database that you can use with SQL, making it a little bit nicer even to analyze data without having to write a lot of code. Then of course, if you are a DBA, you can familiarize you with all the technologies of new functionality that's there in Oracle as well, without having to be too concerned whether your company licensed that or not, and so forth. And if you happen to be an educator, so schools, universities, etc., you run your own meetups or something, you can happily use XE to actually teach other people how to use Oracle database, how to use a relational system, how to use SQL. And last but not least, if you're in what we call an ISV, an independent software vendor, so if you're producing your own software that you actually sell or ship somewhere, you can actually embed XE as part of the software as well and ship it to your customers as well.
Free.
3 questions there already.
Sorry, free to distribute as well?
Free to distribute as well. There's 3 questions in the room. How do we address questions? Do we need the mic, or no, that's probably fine, right? Please.
Do we have a choice in loading version, or do we, when we go, we only get the latest version? Because it's a matter of how much space and so forth. If you don't need certain features, we choose, the previous one is okay, rather than consume, a lot of power.
So you can still, the 11GXE is still up there, you can still download it and run it. We didn't take it away. So if you want to use that for whatever reason, then you're happy to do so. And we will, just like with the other database versions, we will keep them up for a while. You can actually not download 10GXE anymore, but that goes back to 2004. We don't really want people to start learning on very old technology, but we will keep a couple of versions for you, and you pick and choose whatever you feel like is appropriate for your use case. We had 2 more questions, 3 more, wow.
When you say real application, I mean to say the RAG or the application?
No, it's a good question. So when Joel said real applications, we have an option called real application clusters, or short RAC. That's our clustering technology. Express edition is a single edition only, so there's no RAC included.
That's why I thought it wasn't available to get like 12 solutions. Like XE.
No, XE is there since 10G, so 10G, 11G, and then we did it for 18C. That's because we changed our versioning scheme from 12 to 18 halfway through. All right, the 2 more questions and then we roll on.
I know you guys had 11XC version in 11, and now you've got 18. What happened to 12? You do any development in 18 with that back?
Well, so essentially what happened to 12 is a good question, right? So to make it short, we changed from our 5-year release cycle to a yearly release cycle. So what should have been 12.202 became 18C. What should be 12.203 will be now, or is now 19C. So that's what happened. That's why you got 18CXE, but it's still compatible with 12.201 and so forth as well. And then last question, please.
Is there still a size limitation for XC?
There is still a size limitation for XE. So you get 12 gig of storage, but you have compression now available as well. All right.
Do we have the advanced compression as well?
Yeah.
Because that's the license.
XE, everything is free. You get basically single instance enterprise edition for free with the resource constraints in place and with no support, but you can use any feature that's coming in there, including advanced compression.
Gerald, can I get XE via Vagrant, and what's Vagrant?
Yeah, so how do you get XE, how do you get going? So you could obviously go on OTN, on the Oracle Technology Network, download it. It ships as a Windows MSI installer or as a Linux RPM, so you can install it for Windows and for Linux. Of course, a lot of times these days we have either MacBooks or other operating systems, so we have made it simple for other technologies as well. So for example, we have shipped Vagrant boxes for XE as well as for a lot of our other software. Vagrant is a nice little utility by HashiCorp that allows you to provision virtual VMs with a single command. So that integrates with VirtualBox, for example, and all you do is you download XE binary, you say Vagrant up, and it will set up a VirtualBox for you. We've actually also shipping it as Docker images as well, if you just wanna, that was your question, right? If you wanna actually spin it up as a Docker container as well.
Thanks, Gerald. So you asked the question about size limitation, and people think, oh, 12 gigabytes, what can I do with that? I've seen an extraordinary number of real applications. If you're talking relational data, you could stuff a lot of data in 12 gigabytes. If you start doing attachments and images and things, I came across a gentleman from Curacao, the island. He wrote a whole hospital management system in XE for a hospital. It was production. And that's a good example. I'm going to talk about Apex here in a minute. But there's a partner of ours in Croatia. They wrote a whole human resources management system in Apex, and it can run in any Oracle database. And they have some customers, using it on paid Oracle databases. But the smaller customers, they just deploy it on XE, so the same human resources system. And just a couple weeks ago, I was in the Netherlands, and I visited a company, Bijenkorf. They advertise themselves as the Neiman Marcus of the Netherlands. And I looked on their architecture, and they had XE embedded there, and on all of their point of sale systems. Everything else here is Windows, and for whatever reason, this lookup here they had in Apex on XE locally. So there are a number of embedded use cases, and people use it for real. Yeah, thanks, Gerald. So Mark and I work on the Apex team, and this is a sample of the community that we have cultivated since 2004. And I'm convinced after today, you'll be one of these people, right? You will be this enthusiastic. I know you guys think I'm snowing you, but you'll find out here. So a few years ago at the Oracle show in San Francisco, we were in the demo grounds where you demo, what you're talking about. In our case, we had Apex. And some gentleman came up to us and said, Apex saved the country. The United States in this case, right? And we thought the guy was drunk or joking with us, and he said, no, Apex saved the country. And as it turns out, this gentleman works for the FDIC, the Federal Deposit Insurance Corporation. And I'm sure everybody remembers the financial meltdown that happened in, when was it, 2007 and 2008. And it was a prime example of an opportunistic application. Because remember, Congress passed this legislation and all this funding to keep all the banks afloat. Right? And there isn't an application ready-made to say, okay, let's manage the disbursement of these funds across all these banks across the U.S. to keep everything afloat. And they quickly did it in an Apex application. Right? It is an ideal tool for this type of opportunistic applications. In Forbes magazine, there was a lady who she went down to help Puerto Rico manage the grants for funding after they were ripped by the hurricane, and they quickly built it in Application Express. And it is exactly this type of use case. It isn't the only use case, but it is exactly this type of use case where people commonly use Apex to solve real problems and do it at effectively low cost and quickly. Last year, there was an analyst from Constellation Research. I promote this here, but I was kind of bummed out when I read his title, right? He talked about Apex being one of the best kept secrets of the Oracle technology stack. And as a longtime Oracle employee and shareholder, right, you want to have your stuff, somebody shouting from the hills, not have this company keep quiet about it. But I mean, I'll give an explanation for this. As most people know, Oracle has historically been such a sales-focused company, and the marketing and sales and PR dollars flows to those products for which Oracle can charge licensing revenue. Apex is a feature of the database that's included with the database, just like SQL, and we've amassed probably 400,000 developers worldwide. And the thing I like about it, once you see Apex, you'll understand, is it is organic. These are people who have been successful and are using this by choice. It isn't Oracle's getting any additional fee from them. And the nice thing about Apex as well is it runs wherever the Oracle database runs. So you can build an application on FreeXE, completely free. If it grows beyond the scale of XE, you can deploy it wherever the Oracle database runs. So the one thing that we'll be showing today is a website called apex.oracle.com. And I don't think I have this slide in there, but this is where anybody can come along, sign up for a workspace. Today, nobody from sales or marketing will call. And I would say half the people who sign up on apex.oracle.com use it just to get a slice of a database. They don't even really care about Apex. But I'm fine with that, because if I convert 5% of these people, I'm ahead of the game. And we get probably 2,000 people a week sign up on apex.oracle.com. It's amazing, and it's a single Oracle database. So I'm going to give just I promise you I'm not going to PowerPoint you to death, nor is Mark, but I just want to give just some level set here of what this is. Gerald describes Apex as the GUI of the Oracle database. It's what you create, the user interface, against data in your Oracle database. And since its genesis, our sole purpose has been lots of customers have lots of data in Oracle databases, and what's the easiest way for them to create an HTML web front end on that data. Simply put, you got data here, you want to do a chart or report. How can we make it extraordinarily easy for you to visualize that data? That has been our goal. You don't have to know a lot of technology. I have been described as the worst JavaScript developer on the planet. I'm not a JavaScript guy. I'm a SQL guy and database tuning guy. And I build applications in Apex that look beautiful. And they look beautiful on a mobile device. Me, right? So if you know SQL, it is to your benefit. So I did touch on this a little bit. I look at the growth of Apex, and again, I describe this as completely organic, right? We don't have anybody from Oracle saying, oh, Mr. Customer, you should use this. We're the only ones who've been ringing our bell about this for years. And we look at even the signups on apex.oracle.com back in 2010. For the year, we had under 20,000. And in 2018, we had, what was it, over 100,000. And it is accelerating. There are a number of Apex-specific conferences worldwide. And again, we estimate around 400,000 developers. And this is all organic. So let me give a live demonstration if I can. I don't know how I can hold the microphone.
Me to hold the microphone for you.
No, that's okay. It might be good. Yeah, this is going to be a challenge. Well, this will be a... That's okay. This will be a real testament if I can build a responsive application with one hand while holding a microphone. How's that?
Try that.
Yeah.
Don't move.
Can you hear me now? All right. I'm pretty sure I don't need the microphone anyways. Okay, I'm going to go to apex.oracle.com. And this is a workspace that Marc and I have running here. And anything I do right now, you can do yourself. There's no trickeration happening here. And I'm going to show one of the simplest use cases that I see that Apex is used for. Now, it's a little bit dangerous because we do spreadsheet replacement, right? So I have a spreadsheet. I want to put it in an Oracle database, and I want to create a web application on top of that. And when we promoted this heavily back in 2005 and 2006, the people said, oh, okay, Apex is good for toys. You can't do real applications with it. You can't do real enterprise class applications. And that's a falsehood because we have customers who have built large applications, thousands of pages, used by hundreds of thousands of users. But I love this use case because it is omnipresent in every enterprise. At Oracle, the information management company, I come across spreadsheets all the time. A week ago, there was a team at Oracle that they wanted us to review some files on a website. They were going to send a spreadsheet of 500,000 rows to close to 400 people. And I loudly objected and said, please do it in Apex. And so instead of sending this attachment to all these people, they sent everybody a URL. And this use case is everywhere. So what I'm going to do, I'm going to create an application. I'm going to create a new app. I'm going to create it from a file. And I have a simple spreadsheet here, a native Excel spreadsheet. I'm going to drag and drop. Let's hope it doesn't stall here for us. Okay. It parsed the data. I'm going to call my table name tasks. I'm going to load the data. So it created a table underneath the hood in this database on apex.oracle.com. And now I'm going to build an Apex application on top of this. And an Apex application, it's resident in the database. It is not a code generator. We have a catalog in Apex that describes, it's metadata that describes your application. So I'm going to call this tasks. I'll check some features here. And I'll create. And so now what it's doing, it's generating the definition in the Apex catalog. And now when this is complete, I can run my application and it's going to read that definition out in real time. Okay, so in a few seconds, I have a 25-page application. I'm going to run it. By default, it uses the same credentials at which we authenticated to Apex, but you can change this to anything you want. It could be LDAP, it could be database, it could be HTTP header variable. It could be what we call social sign-in, so you could create an app that authenticates to OAuth 2 or OpenID, right? So Facebook or Yahoo, any of these. So I log into my app, and now I'm running my Apex application. I have a nice report here. I can filter this. I can edit data, right? So it's a full CRUD app with a very usable report here. So I can also customize this report. Let's say I don't want to see end date. Let's say I want to group by project, on and on and on. So I, the end user now, I can customize the view of this data however I wish. Also, there's a dashboard that we created. So we know a lot about the data because we analyze the table, we know what the cardinality is, what the distribution of rows is, and we did our best guess at a dashboard here. Now let's say I want to create a new page. Let me create a chart in this application, okay? I'll show you what's involved. So I'll edit my application, I'll create a page, and I'm going to choose chart, and I think I want to do a pie chart if I can. And I could choose a table, or what I could do is I could enter a SQL query. And let me choose SQL query. So any SQL that I can express, I can use here. I'll say select account star, project from my tasks table, group by project. Whatever you want. This could be an 8-way Cartesian product. Could do whatever Oracle SQL you want here. I'm just going to get a count of these. So the label column is going to be project. The value is going to be count. And that's it. I didn't enter any CSS, any HTML, didn't generate any code. And I now run my application, and here's my sweet looking pie chart. It is this easy. And the nice thing, who in here is an accomplished, responsive design developer? So you can create responsive apps just like that. That's okay. Neither am I, right? But, right, you run this on your phone, and it's great. Listen, not only am I a terrible JavaScript developer, I don't even know where to start with responsive design. It's actually complicated stuff. And I like to think that we employ one of the best UI designers on the planet. And what we've in effect done is taken his smarts and built this in Apex out of the box. So you can create responsive applications that look great. Here, let me look at this chart I just added. That look great on a tablet, on a phone. It's awesome, right? I like to say your data's never looked this good. It's incredible. Okay. Any questions at all? Are you all mystified? I hope I'm changing your opinion a little bit that Oracle's not so difficult to use. Yes, sir.
So you put in a CSV file. What if it was a JSON object or a JSON document?
Yeah, this is so the question was, what if it was a JSON document? It used to be CSV only, right? Which was kind of, you couldn't even do native Excel. But this is one of the things that we added in the latest release of Apex 19 is it could be CSV, native Excel, XML, JSON, whatever you wish, okay? So great question. And let's face it, in this scenario, we were loading this type of data. Other customers, they're not creating, new tables. They have tables with bazillion rows. They just want to do visualization on that as well, right? So it doesn't have to be a new table. You could build an app. Just remember that SQL query that I wrote, it could be any SQL query on any table in your schema. Yeah? There was another question? Yes, ma'am.
Well, in the real world, you probably have several tables that have relationships. Is it going to take those relationships?
So the question was, in the real world, there are tables that have several relationships, and
There's several tables.
yeah, that's right. So
there's nothing preventing you from writing a join query that aggregates the information you wish.
Well, I'm talking about when you're saying magically bring it in. Does it bring it in with that?
Sorry, what do you mean by bring it in?
Well, I'm thinking of something I have now. I've already created that relationship when I created the database. So when I import it into this, do I have to now manually create that relationship again?
Do you understand the question, Gerald?
Yeah, you import a CSV file with employees, right? You have the company, which is on a table, and you have employees in another table. How do you deal with the import?
The transaction is like you access your schema tables in your schema. When you go to single workshop, you can show that like the tables are already there. They are at your disposal, right? You just start our wizards and you point to the tables that are already in that schema.
Sorry, I think I understand the question now. There isn't anything magical that we're doing in Apex here. Like what Marc wanted me to show here is there's an object browser here in Apex, so you can browse the objects in your schema. But you could just as easily access this via Toad or SQL Developer or anything. And you can define this referential integrity yourself in DDL in the database. You don't necessarily, it isn't anything specific to Apex at all. Did that answer your question?
I would still, what you're saying, I still have to recreate the database.
No.
Yeah, okay.
Okay, so what she means is, I do have the enterprise system. Can I directly link with the FX to get the GUI? I don't have to import the data, something like that.
Was that your question?
Is that the question?
Well, that's if you already have it in Oracle.
I mean, I do have a database.
Yeah. Well, if you don't have it in Oracle, then you need to migrate it to Oracle. That is true. So if your data is not currently in Oracle database, then you would have to bring it into an Oracle database, or you would have to make it available as a REST API, for example. But there are ways to both to migrate it, there are ways to open it up to Apex. So depending on where your data currently resides, there are different options for you too.
It's not as magical.
But if you have an enterprise database on Oracle with 2,000 tables and relationships on top, you can happily install Apex on top and surface some of that data. All of the 2,000 tables or 2 tables or whatever it is. So nothing prevents you from that. It still goes on top of your relational model.
If it's not in Oracle, it's still...
If it's not in Oracle, then you would have to...
That's the magic.
Is it not a JDBC connection?
Sorry, say again, is it not?
I mean, could you connect using JDBC?
To your database?
Or another database? Non-Oracle.
Well, this lives inside the database. So like if you're coding in Java, you have JDBC connections to whatever database you connect to. This works a little bit differently.
Yeah. What Marc will show, though, is, especially in an era of cloud, there are no things like database links, but you can access any remote data source over REST. And Marc will give an example of that, okay? One more question? Okay, yeah. Sorry for being a little slow on the trigger. I guess that's too many fun liqueurs for me, okay? Yeah, so I think I'm done with that. That was almost one hand. Yes, sir?
Back to the REST question though.
Yeah.
You can link it to join between a REST to tables inside the Oracle database as well too.
Show that too.
Yes, and Marc's going to show that as well. And I think that's one of the distinguishing factors is, let's say you're in an Oracle database. Let's say you're in XE, right, the free database, and you're going to consume data from some REST endpoint out there. Could be anything, right? Could be a flat file for all you care. And you have the ability to take that data and join it via SQL to tables in your local database, which I think is, I don't know, blows my mind. Okay. Great question, and Marc will show this. How am I doing on time? Okay. A little too long?
No, you're fine.
Okay. Yeah, but Marc has some stuff to show here. I will accelerate this. So we use this ourselves internally at Oracle. We have an application that our team is responsible for and wrote, and we're very good at writing database apps, and this is probably the most popular application in all of Oracle. It's used by, it's an employee directory lookup, and it's a mini data mart of our property manager database and our HR database. And we every night refresh the data and do some interesting calculations on the data and surface it in an Apex application and get around 2 million page views a day from about 65,000 users. And from a request standpoint, you look at this Apex engine and the magic associated with it, Margarita. And we'll get upwards of 100 requests a second, just hammering this database. And it is extraordinarily efficient, and every request is about 0.04, 0.05 seconds. It's super fast. Every person at Oracle uses it, every person at Oracle knows it. Recently, we were a bit disenchanted with some of the form management solutions we had at Oracle. And so a few people on our team modeled something after Stack Overflow. We call it Einstein. And rather than pay some third party, it's a great testament to what we can accomplish in Apex itself. And so we use this for the database group, for the cloud group, for the Apex group. And again, it's internal, but you can create very scalable applications with beautiful UI. From a product standpoint, Gerald talked about this a little bit. One of our customers is the UK Ministry of Defense, and they've been using Apex now for more than 10 years, and they have a whole back-end information system. They're a business just like every other business, where they manage people and stores and pay. And the interesting thing about these guys is they used to do a lot of customizations of UI, and anymore they've said, they've told all their developers no more customizations. They're convinced the Apex team has one of the best UI guys on the planet. If he does it, then we'll do it through Apex. And this is always a good case that just because you're using Apex doesn't mean you build stellar applications. So if you go out to, there's a community site out here called builtwithapex.com. Some apps are fantastic. Some apps leave a little to be desired, but it's a great community showcase of what people are doing with Apex. We promised we were going to talk a little bit about cloud, but just understand Apex runs wherever the Oracle database runs. On the free XE, on the Oracle Database Cloud, and I'm sure Gerald's going to be chagrined about this, but I like promoting this as well. Even our competitor Amazon, they have a relational database service for Oracle. They promote Apex being available on their services. And it's really a testament that wherever you build an Apex application, you have an Oracle database. It runs just fine. Okay, Mark.
Thank you. Right, I'll take that.
Oh, you might want that too.
All right, yeah, I want to talk a little bit about the REST APIs that we touched on. What we've seen so far, it's mostly about data in your Oracle database. Of course, you can reach out to other databases as well. You can create database links to other databases. You can talk to other databases through various web services. And to the other point about JDBC, Apex is installed inside a database, so you're directly connecting to that data. There's no JDBC connection that you would typically find in like a middle tier database kind of setup. But what I want to show is how you can actually connect to external REST APIs and how you can connect that data, combine that data with local data in your database. And last year with Apex 18.1, we introduced this feature, the ability to open up Apex to external data sources through REST APIs. And at that time, I was looking for sample data just to kind of try out the feature and kind of look at large amounts of data and just test it. And I came across this New York City open data website, which I found really fascinating because there's just so much information about the city there, and it was a great place for me to find interesting data sources to play with this feature. And then I kind of dug a little bit deeper, and there was an event, Oracle Code New York last year in March or April, and I prepared a little presentation for that, and I asked the city of New York if it would be okay to use that data for the presentation. And they were very excited about it, and the New York City Mayor's Office of Data Analytics actually sent someone to be there with me and talk about open data and the goals that New York City has, and we kind of had this combined presentation. And what I want to show is how you can connect to one of these data sources. You find anything here, 311 data, crime data, demographics data, school data, so all kinds of information that the city has is available here. And one of my favorite data sets is traffic violations. It's one of the data sources where I find myself. It's nice. I mean, I have a
Oh, how often?
yeah, we'll see. But so this is how like a typical data set looks like. You get your license plate. So if you ever want to look up yourself, just go to this field over here, put in your license plate, and see how many violations you have. It has a state, summons number, it has issue date, violation time, the fine amount, and if you paid late, the penalty amount. So lots of interesting information, and I want to build an application on top of this data. And somewhere down here I have the link. So this site here explains how the data is structured. It talks about all the different columns that you will find, and then it gives you like a preview of how that data would look like. For me in Apex, what I need to connect to this kind of data and to connect to it live in real time is the REST endpoint. That's when you click here on the API, you get this API endpoint, which I can just copy. And when you look at it in your web browser, it looks like this. A little bit hard to read, but this is like all the traffic violations in New York City over the last couple of years. Now I can just take this URL and create a data source inside Apex to build reports and charts on that data. So I'm going to start, like Joel did, creating a new application. I'm going to call this traffic violations. And I don't need anything else here for now, so I'm just going to go ahead and create this app. This gives me just an empty application, right? There's just an app skeleton, there's a login screen, and then there's a blank homepage. There you go. So now I want to fill in some data in here. So I'm going back to Apex, and what Joel had shown is like uploading a spreadsheet, and we also looked at SQL Workshop, how they're like local tables, so you can build reports and charts and forms on local tables. But if you want to connect to a REST API or to a remote data source, you need to define a new data source first. And you do that here in shared components. And then you create something that we call a web source module. A web source module is basically a container in which you can define your REST endpoint and then define how you want to connect to it, what kind of information you want to retrieve. So I'm going to start out here from scratch. I'm just going to copy and paste the endpoint in here. And I'm going to call this traffic violations. And then I hit next. And then Apex looks at the data. It finds the base URL. I created this before, so it recognizes that. And then I hit next again. And now I can define authentication. If I'm connecting to some other system like Fusion Apps or something like that, I would typically have to authenticate. The API that I'm talking to is wide open, so I don't need to authenticate. And I can add some additional arguments and query strings. I'm going to do that a little bit later. So now Apex is actually connecting to this REST API, and it's showing me the data that it can retrieve from there. And that looks good to me. I'm just going to pull it all in for now. And now I'm creating a web source. So I'm not actually loading any data right now. I'm just defining a pointer to this REST API. So now that I have this web source module here, I can go back into the application builder, start creating a report. I'm going to create what we call an interactive report, because interactive reports, they give the end user some capabilities to do some basic data analysis, which is exactly what I want to do. Traffic violations. And then I do want to integrate that in my navigation menu. And then this is a page where you define how you connect to this data, right? We talked about local data. There are tables. There's SQL query, which is what Joel used for his chart. Then there's REST-enabled SQL. That is if you want to talk to other remote Oracle databases. And then there are web sources. And I created this traffic violations web source a few minutes ago. So it shows up here in that drop-down now. And then I can choose which ones of these columns I want to include. I'm going to go with everything for now. I can always refine this later. And now I have an interactive report on this traffic data, which is executed in real time. the REST API is only getting refreshed so and so often by the city, but it could be real-time data, it could be up-to-the-minute data. And as I reload this and go to this traffic violations page, I'm actually making a connection to that REST API, and I'm pulling in the first 1,000 or so rows. And there's my data. Still a little bit hard to read, so let's make this a little bit prettier. Let's look for the information that I actually care about. So I do want to see the plate. I do want to say, well, I don't care about the state. I do want to see the county, the precinct I don't need. I want to see what kind of violation. I want to see when it happened, the fine amount, and don't need this. Issuing agency I don't need. Payment, penalty, all of this I don't need. I want to see the time. And I don't need this either. So some other interesting information, but let's go with this for now. All right, so there's the plates. There's the counties, Bronx, Kings, New York, Manhattan. Then there's the actual violation. Then when did it happen, and the fine amount, and the violation time. So now there's lots of data in there, right? There are lots of traffic violations in New York, and I want to kind of limit this down a little bit. I want to just look at current data, the last couple of months. And I want to pull in a little bit more than those initial 1,000 rows. So I can go back to my web source and I can make some modifications. I can send in some arguments to that remote server and tell it that I want to have more data. So when I add the query string, that means to the end of my URL, I'm appending something, and in this case I'm appending $limit, and I want to have 10,000 rows. And that then I also want to limit this to just 2019. And when I look at this definition, there's a column called issue date. So I can just take this, go back to my web source, and then create a where clause as if it were SQL, and then say issue date like 2019. All right, I'm going to add this, apply changes here. When I run this again, I should now only see 2019 data. That looks good. And I'm actually getting a lot more rows. And now I can start doing some analysis, right? I can look at what's happening, for example, in which borough. So I can create a chart. And I can do a pie chart on the county, and then I want to get a count. All right, so who's in the lead here? There you go. We have Queens, we have Brooklyn. Well, I guess K is Kings County, that's Brooklyn too. The Bronx, again Queens, and New York I think is Manhattan. So this is pretty evenly spread. Now if I go in and, for example, look at the sum of the money coming in. Let's see who's in the lead here. Yeah, still pretty even. So I can do this kind of analysis, and I can also go a little bit further, and let's say I want to sort this by the type of violation. And if you guys live here, then obviously you know which one is the most common one. No parking, street cleaning. Got to move your car for street cleaning once or twice a week. So that's definitely in the lead here. And then I guess ever since we got these speeding cameras in school zones, this one has been shooting up quite a bit. All right, so this is how you can interface with remote data sources and how you can do some real-time analysis. And one last interesting feature here with interactive reports, you can also create pivot reports. So I'm going to do a pivot on the county, Brooklyn, Queens, Manhattan, and such. And then for the rows, I want to see the violation, and then I want to see a count. And then I get a pretty interesting view of the violations on the left, the counties on top, and then broken down what's happening where and what kind of violations. All right, so this is one data source, right? That was that one API that I've been talking to. But now I actually want to connect this data to local data in my database. So when I go back to SQL Workshop, I happen to have a table that I've preloaded here, and this table I call it for hire vehicle. And what that is, it actually gives you the license number and the names and the companies and the phone numbers of all the New York City taxi and limousine and Uber and Lyft drivers. So this is a nice database to kind of look up all that information. But how about I connect this local table now with my traffic violations? So let's do that. I'm going back to this. I'm going to edit this page. And that was the point that Joel was making earlier. Right now I'm just talking to one REST API. Now the power of Apex really comes in with this local post-processing feature, where you can actually get a SQL query on top of this REST API, which looks like this. Well, that's actually the function. I want to have the query. Okay, it looks like this. And now you can modify the query. Maybe some columns you don't want to include here. Maybe you don't want to do your own computations in your SQL. Maybe you want to add your own where clause. Or in my case, I want to query up some additional data. So let's say I want to have the name. And there are more elegant ways to kind of write this, but just for demo purposes, I'm just going to concatenate these fields. And I want to have the phone number. I want to call the person who had the violation. So let's pick up the base telephone number. And then I'm going to select this from that table, which is called for hire vehicle. And then my where clause is where plate, that's over here, where plate equals, let's give this an alias, and that table, what I'm looking for is the DMV license plate number. And I'm mixing things up here, so let's remove this from here. All right, so that should do it. All right, hit OK. Save this and run it. And now I don't see, well, that's too long. That was, let's call this contact. And I'm probably still not going to see much because, of course, in the traffic violations REST API, there's everybody in there, and I'm really only interested in taxi drivers and limousine drivers. So in order to actually find someone here, I'm going to filter on the license plate. And I know that in New York City, license plates for taxis and limousines start with a T and end with a C. And now I'm actually getting like all these violations along with the name and the phone number of the driver. All right, so what I did here now is I had a REST API and I'm pulling data in from that REST API in real time. And then I wrapped that into an Oracle SQL query and I created a join to a local table to get some additional information. And then the last little bit in here that I want to show is make it a little bit wider, the summons image. And I'm going to make this a link. And I'm going to link this to an external URL. And I'm going to give this a little nice image. And then when I run my interactive report again, I need to actually include this column because I previously removed it. So I'm going to go back to columns. I'm going to include the summons image. And now I can actually look up the actual, whoops, that wasn't it. I'm referencing a column in my query, so I need to close this in these hash characters. Let's try this again. And now I should be able to look up the actual parking ticket. Well, not on this one.
It's not available.
That is so sad. They caught up with me. All right, well, if you come back later to this app, you will be actually able to. I will have to call them. That is not nice. Well, but you get my point.
7 till 11:30. So if we stay until midnight, we should be able to.
Yeah, everybody stay. All right, but you get the concept. So this is how you can build applications on external REST APIs. All right, back to the slides. Oh, sure.
You have your events coming up.
Okay, where's my keynote?
Far right.
Far right.
Far more right.
Oh,
There you go.
you don't have that permanently, huh? All right, so that was my demo. Asked home office hours. So if you like Apex, if you want to learn more about Apex, I highly recommend our Apex office hours. That's a free online webinar. We have the QR codes here, so if you want to scan this. We do them maybe once a month or so, and we started doing them about a year ago. So it's like a 1-hour webinar. You can learn about our new features, new concepts, anything that the development team likes to share. You can look at past recordings and look at live sessions, ask questions during the session, and learn about Apex and all the various features. There's also the Apex curriculum. So this is a curriculum that we made available for free on GitHub. You can download it. It has a permissive use license. You can actually download it and use it for your own education. You can create your own curriculum out of it. So if you are working for university or school, you can use this as a basis for your own curriculum. And we'll share the slides, so if you want to kind of get the URLs later. Apex Multilingual Engine. Gerald, do you have or Joel, anything you'd like to say about what that is? I do have a microphone here.
So what's coming in a future version of the Oracle database is something called MLE or Multilingual Engine, and it will support the ability to have effectively any type of language present in the Oracle database. Today the programming language of the database is PL SQL. We will have JavaScript and Python and R, and these will be native features in the Oracle database. So for those who aren't necessarily familiar with PL SQL, you'll be able to do database programming even through Apex, but as well natively to the database in these other languages. And I'm a fan of it because kids at school today aren't necessarily learning PL SQL, but they sure are learning JavaScript, and we want to give them a platform to build applications for. So that'll be coming in a future Oracle database release.
Thank you. All right, Live SQL. Maybe like a minute or two on Live SQL.
Sure. So, do we really need this mic? I don't know.
Just speak up.
So, if you just want to get started with learning some SQL, or you just say, hey, you know what, I really know I have this data set and I really know how to solve this issue with some SQL, it would be really easy. I don't want to write some bash script, shell script, whatever, right, Perl and so forth. You can do so actually in an online tool that we call Live SQL, livesql.oracle.com. It's a SQL scratchpad. It runs the latest Oracle database, so you can just log on there or go in there and start writing SQL, and you get a session against your own schema on the latest and greatest Oracle database. And you can create tables in there, you can load data in there, you can write some SQL in there, you can save the scripts, you can share it with your coworkers, for example. If you go like, hey, I have this really weird issue there, can you have a look at it or something? You can save it, you can send it on, and so forth. Also, another nice thing that we have there is we have a lot of tutorials that teach you how to use SQL if you want to go through that. So you would just go there and click on tutorials, and there's various different tutorials you can take, whether it's just learning SQL, whether it's knowing how to use our JSON functionality that we have, how to use window functions, and so forth, and it will take you through all this as well in a guided manner.
All right, thank you. All right. Then I have a few events listed here, events coming up in New York. There's going to be another Oracle Code event here next month, May 21st. That's going to be in the Java Center again. You can go to this URL or go to this QR code and sign up. It's free. It's a one-day event. If you want to learn more about building these kind of Apex solutions on REST APIs, I'm going to do a presentation there as well this year at 3 p.m. So stop by there. Again, it's a free event, and it's not just about Oracle products. It's a pretty broad event targeted at developers in general. So if you're interested in microservices, in Docker, and in Vagrant, or whatever else, there are sessions on all these topics. New York Oracle User Group, there's going to be an event coming up on June 5th in my office at 120 Park Avenue. So I think the agenda isn't out yet, but you can go to the NYUG website and sign up. And then lastly, there's the Developer Week New York. That's an annual, very big event. This year it's in Brooklyn and Williamsburg. It has like 3,000 participants. And again, I'm going to do a presentation on Apex and interfacing with REST APIs at that event. It's a 3-day conference, so that's a pretty big event. But yeah, if you want to learn more about Apex or develop in general, it has nothing to do with Oracle. I just happen to speak about Apex here as well. All right, that's your slide, Joel.
You might have seen that I have this Apex sticker here on my laptop, which I did bring some Apex stickers for those who are truly committed. The features at Oracle don't get logos, so of course the man said we can't have our logo, so the community created them, and these actually come from Munich, Germany, from a freelancer there who spends about, I don't know, €1 a piece for these stickers. But the only point I wanted to convey here is this is his Audi R8, and there's money to be made doing Apex. Oh, and I do have stickers up here, and I'll gladly give you one, as long as you promise to either tweet a picture of it or send me a picture and I'll tweet it for you. Okay? That's all we have. Are there any other questions? We'll be here afterwards if you don't want to ask this in public. Yes, sir.
What about scalability? Let's say and the other question I have is, I work for a large company. Oracle 11 is embedded in the organization. How would I use Apex on Oracle 11?
You can use Oracle. So the minimum version of Oracle database for Apex, the latest version, it's like 11.204. So any of your database on up, you can install the latest version of Apex in it.
Oh, so I'm still going to Oracle.
Everything you see here, right? You get that out of the box. And then in terms of scalability, I wrote an interesting blog post a number of years ago because I deal with customers and I deal with support, and we get issues of slow performance, right? CIO looked at the Apex apps. Apex apps are slow. 99 times out of 100, it's the SQL that you author which is slow, right? So if you have an 8-way Cartesian product that takes 30 seconds, you try to bring it up in Apex, and it's executing that SQL query.
My SQL's slow.
Yeah. Okay. Yeah. So when people talk about scalability, it is as fast and as efficient as you can write SQL. If you write a slow query, it's going to make your Apex app appear slow. The thing I will say, that same slow query is going to be slow in .NET and PHP and Python and Java. It doesn't matter, right?
How could, let's say it was going to go to tens of thousands of some things. What would I have to do? How would I tweak Apex to handle that?
There's the Oracle database instance setting, fast equal true. You have to, that's a joke, right?
This is clearly layered on top of it.
Yeah, that's right. So the interesting thing about Apex is, at the end of the day, it's a UI on the database. And so there's all these tools and all these techniques for writing efficient SQL, writing efficient applications. And that really is the crux of this, of tuning an Apex app. You're really tuning a database application. When you look at that application we wrote, that employee directory, right? I'm not a CSS guy, but I'm really good at database design in SQL. We are really good. And each of those requests take 0.04 seconds, which is pretty fast. Now let's say we sucked at writing SQL, right? Let's say each request took a second, which in my mind is a lifetime. That's going to create contention. People are going to get impatient and they're going to hit reload and they're going to even exacerbate the problem. And so it's really a function of how efficient you make these requests. And that pertains to any database application, right? Not just Apex. So we have customers literally using Apex applications that have 250,000 end users. They're really good at writing database apps, but it is very scalable. When people come up to us and they say, but Joel, you're not going to write Amazon.com with Apex. And I say, you're exactly right. I probably wouldn't use Apex for that. But 90% of the other business problems in that domain, it's ideal for. I hope I answered your question rather than just uttered a lot of words.
Well said.
Okay.
No, I understand what you're saying about delivering the data, but even delivering the data, you just want to make sure people handle that.
Yeah. The other thing,
generating pages and stuff.
The thing I'll say about the Apex architecture, which is unique because it's part of the database, is most applications, most back office business applications deal with data. They really do. They're data driven, processes, flows, whatever. And some architectures treat the database like a bit bucket, right? We're going to put in a row, get out a row, and we're going to do everything in some middle tier somewhere. Okay, I get it. But I'm a database guy, and there is no better place on the planet for me to sort and aggregate and fetch data. Do I want to do it inside the database, or do I want to do it outside of the database? And I look at a lot of some of these middle tier architectures where they create these just exotic systems to handle with concurrency and contention and on and on and on. The Oracle database, that was solved 30 years ago, right? I mean, it's funny for us.
I write a lot of PL SQL. I know exactly what you're doing.
For us to we maintain session state in the database, and for us to maintain session state in the database, some architectures they write these just fantastic pieces of code, and in Apex we just say insert, right? It's really that simple, and we put all the burden on the database. So, sorry, there was another question somewhere.
Oh, I was going to ask, what's the minimum requirement for Apex to actually run?
The minimum requirement?
Yeah, like 1 gig of RAM or 5?
It runs great on XE, and so you could run it free on XE. And there's actually even a hosting company out there called maxapex.com. They host XE. I think it's for like $10 or $15 a month. I've run XE on Amazon tiny compute instances.
Talk about Apex stuff.
Sure.
So like, what's the minimum requirement? Like, you don't.
But Apex runs inside the database, right?
So
It's installed in the database. There is a little like web listener in front called Oracle REST Data Services, same license as Apex, also free, that you interact with, that basically takes your request and puts it to the Apex engine. But Apex gets installed inside the database. It is in effect a database application, yeah, and it runs great on XE. I gave examples of customers running production applications on XE.
So the thing is, though, that means you're exposing the database engine to the net and essentially in a way, right?
Well, you are exposing predefined entry points to your application, to the internet, if you will. Yep, that's right. But it isn't like it's wide open or there's arbitrary SQL. I mean, we have intelligence agencies around the world use Apex just fine,
Well, because I was going to say, is like in those cases, having it like that, then where would you do the permissioning? You do the permissioning on the database level itself for the table as well as the schemas and stuff?
Depends what you mean by permissions. If you're
as far as like, so in certain cases, if a user logs into Apex, they should be able to, some users should be able to do a DDL, and then some might want to do a DML for some, I don't know why, but in fact in those cases.
Sure. Well, there's the development interface of Apex, and there's the runtime of Apex. So you are, if you're running an application, you never log into the development environment that Marc and I had. All you're doing is running an app. So if you ever have heard of asktom.oracle.com, if you're an Oracle person, that's an Apex app. You're running that app. You can't issue any arbitrary SQL there. You're running an app that someone else wrote. There is no arbitrary SQL interface for you to manipulate, for you to run SQL on that app, right?
So is Apex dependent on the XE settings? I think that's what he's trying to ask.
No.
Apex, you need XD in order to run Apex.
No, you need an Oracle database to run Apex. It runs in any Oracle database.
Okay, so whatever the setting is for the Oracle database
Yeah,
is what Apex inherits.
that's right. You can run it.
Is that, I mean, that's you're agreeing.
The Apex runs inside the database. The settings of the database are what you run with. That's right. So if you have some database that has 32 processors, then sure, you're running with those settings as well.
The security settings is included.
Well, security is separate from that, right? We're talking application security. So I log in. Am I allowed to see data that maybe someone else is not? Me, a database guy, I would probably put that security rule as close to the data as possible rather than implement it in my application. Because if I build it in my application and somebody comes along with Tableau, guess what? You got to build the same security there as well. Yeah. Make sense? Yes, sir?
You just mentioned the ask count. So, is there any limit on how many pages we can create this Apex app? Because I know ask count has millions of pages.
Yeah, I wrote the first Ask Tom in Apex back in 2002. That was the first application on the internet. So the question was, is there any limit in the number of pages? And no, it's just an additional row of metadata for us. You can have thousands of pages in an Apex application, and there's no limit on the number of end users. You could have 1 million end users if you wanted use an Apex application. There are no licensing limits or anything like that. And no limit on number of pages or how complex they can be.
So it could be like a metadata point towards the real data in the database. That would be a one page.
Sure, that's right. I mean, typically, your page you might have a report, might have a chart, and that's one page. What happens is the Apex engine reads that data, parses and executes that SQL, and merges the results and sends it back. That's one page. Yeah. Yes, sir.
I start with Oracle 4. So can Apex do any form type of application? That's typical data entry, data updates, things like that.
Yeah. So you started with Oracle Forms, right?
Long time ago.
I'm going to say you're a young-looking guy to have started with Oracle Forms, right? You don't look. I take that as a compliment, please. So Oracle Forms, for those who don't know, it was Oracle's low-code client-server tool. If you ever heard of Power Builder or anything like that, it was a declarative tool, just like Apex, where you're not necessarily writing code. You're designing your page and layout and adding some SQL, and there is no direct migration from Forms to Apex. There is a tool that one can use to import the definition of your form so you can see it, but there is no direct push a button and out comes a perfect looking Apex application. But I will say that most Forms developers, they gravitate towards Apex quite easily because it's SQL and PL SQL, which is what they're familiar with. And there are a number of customers where they preserve all their back-end logic, their data model, their referential integrity constraints, their PL SQL, and they put a new Apex UI on it. In some cases, and that's when Marc talked about the office hours, we had a whole Oracle Forms office hours session on that. In some cases, you don't necessarily have to migrate everything. Oftentimes, they can coexist. You can have your existing Forms application and do new development in Apex. And at the end of the day, it's going against the same database, logic, SQL, everything. Great question. And I think you're one of the gentlemen who I owe a shot of whiskey to for thanking you for OBJ, right?
I'll see you later.
All right, any other questions? Yes, sir.
So can we add a data using Apex?
Can you add data, like insert new data to a table? Absolutely. So and again, there's nothing magical about Apex. It's just a normal Oracle table under the hood. So that form that I showed, you can create new records, you can delete records, you could, using a different tool, insert data via SQL Loader or whatever. It doesn't matter. It's just an ordinary Oracle table, and you can build apps to create new, like what I did, a form and a report on an existing table. Yeah.
Can the user who is seeing the report can add the data?
Yes, the end user can add the data. I realize that Marc and I switched between these personas. Like first we're building, then we're running it, and in effect, it's easy to get the two confused. But when we were building the app, we logged into the development environment, and then we hit run, and now we're the end user. And then we flip back to the builder, and then we run it. And that's kind of the typical process, though, for Apex. Why it works so well is rather than us design our complete application from scratch, it's this iterative development of build and run it. I'm going to change this and run it, and build it and run it. But the end users, they never see the development environment. They just see your report, your form, and they can insert rows, whatever you wish. Yeah, great question. Okay. Thanks, everyone, for staying so late tonight. I really appreciate it. It was great for you to come. Thank you.
Thank you, Joel, Marc, and Gerald, for this awesome presentation. Thank you all for coming. Our speakers are here for one-on-one questions. Feel free to come on up and ask right after we raffle off this drone. Has everyone got their card in here? Good. We got about 30 seconds before I'm going to do it. Going once, going twice, everybody. That's it. All right. Let's see. Can I ask you to mix it all up? He's not going to be thinking of Can I ask you to look that way and reach in and pull one out? All right, now read it out loud. Read whose card it is.
Shivam Dwayne?
Shivam
Bharadwaj?
Bharadwaj?
Yeah.